Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I would just like one day of covering Tottenham Hotspur to be a normal day. It'd be really nice, wouldn't it? Let's take, for instance, going to watch Tottenham Hotspur hosting Morecambe in the FA Cup third round. Morecambe, 21st place in League One. Should be a normal day, yeah? Any other club, pretty much, that would be a normal day. You could afford to put out a rotated team. That team would do its job. You'd see a few players who aren't always playing do well, score goals. A normal day. Not Tottenham Hotspur. Not even a chance. That starting 11 being pretty much appalling, other than a couple of them. And then one of the most excruciating kind of moments I've had to witness on a football pitch. A weird moment. Let's put it this way. I think we'll, as president of the Tanguy Ndombele Appreciation Society, I probably we're going to have to postpone the next meeting because I'm not entirely sure there's going to be many people turning up. Let's start there. Let's start there straight away. Let's get the Tanguy out of the room, as it were. Let's get the Tanguy out of the room. Let's deal with the Tanguy in the room. Is that whatever? It was a bad expression. Let's get this straight from the start. We're talking about a man slowly walking off a pitch. He hasn't killed anyone. He hasn't done the most horrendous thing anyone can ever do in life. But yeah, I think it was just, and also I must stress, many other players were poor on the day as well. I just think it was one of those moments where it was just a daft thing to do at the daftest time. And yeah, daft. And I think the key thing for me is it should never have got to that stage. Because let's be honest, Tanguy is a player who believes that he should be playing for one of the top clubs in the world. Like, he should be, among the elite. I think that's how he views himself. He believes in his ability, and he has got lots of ability. However, if you have that belief, that you are one of the best out there, then surely taking on the team, 21st in League One, should be a walk in the park. It really should. But it was a different kind of walk, wasn't it? It was a different kind of walk that, absolutely stuffed him. And I think he lost many of those people that have still been backing him. So disappointing. I mean, we know what Tanguy can do very well. We know that he's can be terrific in possession. He can dribble the ball. He can thread those through passes. Those no-look balls. But, he was up against three players who cost Morecambe nothing. You had... I'm going to kill the pronunciation, so I apologise in advance. Toumani Dugaraga and Shane McLaughlin, who were both signed on free transfers, and then there was young 21-year-old Alfie McCalmont, who was on loan from Leeds development squad. Tanguy, with no offence to them, meant whatsoever, because different levels of football, different players play at these different levels, whereas Tanguy Ndombele, a £60 million plus footballer, should be expected to dominate in battles against any of those midfielders. But he didn't. He really didn't. And again, there's probably lots of, the remaining Tanguy fans out there are probably screaming at me, but it wasn't just him, there were loads of people who were rubbish. I know that, but then they didn't do this daft thing on the pitch, which upset a lot of people in the stadium. It was excruciating. Honestly, I'm just kind of sitting there in my press seat, I'm just watching it going, oh man, don't do that, please don't do that, just hurry up. And I think I've spoken before on this. Was it maybe the Liverpool game where he did a very similar kind of slow walk off, and Dele, I think, was also substituted at the same time and came off quite clearly or something like that. So the problem with this one is, Tottenham are, we're 1-0 down to a League One side. It could have been an absolutely humiliating, embarrassing FA Cup defeat at home in front of 40,000 fans. It is. I'm even getting frustrated just talking about it right now because I'm kind of replaying it in my head and how excruciatingly stupid it was. Again, it was just a slow walk, but it was just in that moment, all the fans were looking forward to this triple change. Conte was about to bring on Oliver Skipp, Harry Kane, and Lucas Moura. The game needed it. We all knew that. We could see that. It wasn't rocket science. And the players that were coming off, they hadn't done particularly well considering the level of the team they were playing against. Did Dele Alli, did Tanguy Ndombele, did Bryan Hill look like Premier League players up against the League One side? No, they did not. Bryan Hill had some little moments, but we'll come to him and Dele a little bit later. But on Ndombele's name, if just in case you've somehow managed to miss everything that happened yesterday. So Tanguy Ndombele's name was called out first on the speaker system. He was to be replaced by Oliver Skipp. He understandably very disappointed, maybe disappointed with his own performance, maybe disappointed that he wasn't getting 90 minutes. Either of the two, I don't know. But he slowly started to trudge off the pitch, very slowly, like plodding along, looking very, very sorry for himself. He was on the far side of the pitch. He was almost at the far touchline. Not many other footballers, some other footballers in that moment, wanting to help the team, perhaps would have just gone off on that side and walked around the pitch. And that's exactly what Dele did. Not quite that far, but Dele was taken off Harry Kane. And Dele walked off behind the goal. And you saw him kind of walking along the back of the south stand. He did applauded the fans and they applauded him back. Or certainly some of them did. And then you had Bryan Hill. His name was called out third. And for Lucas. And he started sprinting to get off the pitch. As if to say, come on, yeah, I understand the situation. But the fans just noticed. It was just, I think, it was either just before the Hill name was called out or just after. They noticed that Tanguy was just not getting off the pitch with any real urgency whatsoever. And they started to boo. And the boos got louder and louder as more people realised. You could just kind of see them all pointing and realising, what is he doing? Get off. We need to win this game. Otherwise, we're out of the FA Cup. And it was just, it was so agonising. Yeah, Japhet Tanganga went up to him and tried to kind of shoo him along and push him along. Harry Kane had already come on, and as he was running by him, you could see him shouting at Tanguy to just get off, kind of thing. And then Bryan Hill, in his run, he pretty much almost came off at the same time as Tanguy, and obviously his number had been called a fair while afterwards. And Tanguy, obviously, this is my opinion. And it's opinion of others in the press area, and I think some fans as well that I've seen on social media. And I apologise if it's not the case, but to me, it seemed like Tanguy appeared to slow down as the crowd noise, the boos got louder. Which, I get it. I get you're annoyed. I get you're frustrated. I get you feel that you shouldn't be booed for whatever reason. I've said before, I'm not a massive fan of booing as it is anyway, but if you're in that moment, you just get off the pitch. You don't kind of slow down and almost deliberately antagonise 40,000 people. It was so uncomfortable. It was so awkward. And obviously, he just wasn't there mentally at that point to want to be inside the stadium, kind of the pitch area, so he trudged straight off down the tunnel. He did come back towards the end of the game. He sat next to a couple along from Ryan Sessegnon. He was all bundled up in the big kind of not training hoodies, like the warm jackets they give them to sit on the bench with. And he was there at the very end, but it was so awkward. And Conte afterwards, to be fair to Conte, he tried to protect him a bit, I feel. He was very vague in his answers. He kept kind of dodging questions about Tanguy. Every question kind of turned into a bit of a vague, indirect thing about the team being poor, which is true. The team was poor. This is what I want people not to. I know some people on Twitter have kind of taken it as if Tanguy's being scapegoated, but he isn't. It's just Tanguy reacted the way he did in a moment when, look, yes, if you want to be really pedantic, we're talking about matters of seconds here that probably, the referee may have even held up the game for long enough for it to happen. But I think as Tottenham fans, having witnessed a poor performance from their team, they want every one of those players to be there to help the team. And, it goes back to Conte's words to me, wasn't it? About 2 weeks in, if that, into his Tottenham time. He said, I want Tanguy to be more considerate, thinking about the team than about himself. And it's moments like that where, you see Dele go straight off behind the goal just to make sure the substitution can be made quickly. You see Hill running off and you see Tanguy just slowly walking off, and it didn't portray the image of someone that really was that fussed about the team. And that's the problem. But so I was trying to think, I've got a quote here somewhere that that was the other thing as well. You could see on the bench as he walked by, I could kind of see him down there looking at him. It was only when I looked at the photos afterwards, you can see Sonny, Dyer, Romero, Reguilon. They're all just looking at him like, and Dyer looks furious in the photos. It's just like, everyone's just looking at him like, no, it's kind of, Tanguy is an interesting character. I've been very fortunate enough to interview him a couple of times. He's very... he's a man that kind of knows... I suppose he knows himself. He knows... He does... I don't want to say he does what he wants, because that's not true, but he has kind of a strong belief in himself. And I think that's what you saw yesterday. You saw a person that essentially was taking on 40,000 people. It's just the wrong battle to pick. It really was. And that was it. He said afterwards, Conte, I was so focused on the game because we're losing 1-0. This is the closest he kind of got to talking about Tanguy in the incident. This type of situation, they happen in football. You have to be good to try to change the opinion. If someone is disappointed with you, it's normal. I was a player, and it happens sometimes to me that someone was unhappy with my performance. This is our life. I repeat, it's okay. We have to continue to work and try to be better next time. So you can see he kind of turned it into a team thing at the end rather than about Tanguy. I think the biggest thing with Tanguy is that ultimately he's the club's record signing. Cost all in, it's more than £60 million when all the add-ons are factored in as well. He should be Tottenham's solution rather than one of their problems. And that's the most annoying thing for me is that, I don't have to tell you, you know that I've always been a Tanguy fan and kind of just hoping that it all went right for him. But, we're now at the stage where I was always told, I think it was Poch who first came out with it, and I've heard others say it as well. Normally, for new foreign signings, you give them between a year and 18 months to adapt to a new club, a new country, and everything. We're at 2.5 years with Tanguy, and it just hasn't happened, has it? It's, I told you this, I think, in either the last video or the one before. The belief inside the club is that he's the best player at the club on the ball, one of the worst off the ball. And that's because, you watch him do incredible things with the ball on the pitch, but then you'll watch him be wildly inconsistent with kind of the motivation of his tracking back, of his putting tackles in and things like that. He will do those things. It's not like he doesn't do them. It's the consistency of how often he does it and how often he presses. And, I saw him, he sprinted in the early moments of the game yesterday he kind of had a chance / cross that was blocked. And, he wasn't dreadful yesterday, but he wasn't good enough for a £60 million player taking on a League One struggling side. I don't think he can have any excuses about his performance. He may have felt that others should have come off before him. I'd say hindsight maybe proved that to be wrong. I felt Lo Celso, while he also wasn't delivering much quality, was working hard, put himself about. Ultimately, he ended up with an assist, which Conte, would no doubt point to. And also, what we mustn't forget with Lo Celso is, well, I'm sure many won't forget, is he's coming back from injury. So he will be rusty and he will be trying to come back from that injury. I don't think Tanguy really has that excuse. Yes, he hasn't played too much football, but, he shouldn't really be rusty, as it were. It's just a theme, isn't it? This is the problem as well. It's a theme throughout Tanguy's career. I don't think anyone would say Tanguy's a troublemaker. I don't even think people would say he's got like a bad attitude or something. He's just a guy that is very much, like I say, kind of works in his own way almost. And like I've said before, he's the fittest he's ever been at Tottenham. He is in really good shape. So there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to run for 90 minutes, pretty much. But it's his choices he makes, mostly in match situations. And like I say, we've had this theme over his career. I'm trying to think if there's any club he's been at where the manager hasn't, at some point, questioned maybe his desire or his motivation levels or his consistency. Is it Bruno Genesis? I think the Lyon manager, I remember him saying something like that. And that was even at Lyon when Tanguy was essentially really starting to make his name and was bringing himself to the attention of all the clubs around Europe. And even his manager then was saying, yeah, but, he's got to do this consistently against all of the teams and the top teams as well. Maybe some accusations a bit like a flat-track bully. But then we saw against Morecambe, he really should have been and he wasn't. Oh, it's so frustrating. And you can see, hopefully, for me, it comes from a place of real affection for Tanguy, because having had a couple of interviews with him, and long interviews as well, where I kind of really got to understand a little bit more about how his brain works, I think it makes it all the more frustrating. I think if I'm going to be entirely brutal, honest, I think it has to. I don't even think it's brutal. I think it's honest. For a player that would, in total, could cost more than £60 million, he's probably now Tottenham's biggest flop of all time. And that's really, it's hard to say, because I think he's one of the most talented Tottenham players to ever pull on the shirt. But if you're looking at what you've got in exchange for a fee that is like, dwarfs most of the fees Spurs have ever paid for anyone, and if you look that we're 2.5 years in, and you've looked that he's 5 managers in now, and he's really, other than a brief period under Mourinho, hasn't been a regular under any of those managers. To have your club record signing not be a regular for any manager. I mean, you can maybe argue Poch was using him a fair bit to begin with, but there was very much an awareness that, back then he was building up his fitness and he was having little niggly injuries as well. But anyone, even Tonguy's biggest fans, and I would probably count myself among those, can you honestly say that for £60 million plus that he has been value for money? You just can't. This is a guy that should be, people like Match of the Day and stuff, they should be looking at him in the biggest matches and saying, like, what a world beater, what a player Tottenham have got here. It just hasn't happened. And I just think, when you look at moments like that, yes, it was just a slow walk, but ultimately, he's not in the position to be able to take that attitude. He hasn't performed to the highest level. He's doing nothing to convince anyone that he kind of deserves to be. I don't know. I don't even think of the way to put it is so difficult, because he's just not showing enough for a player of his. I'd say undoubted quality. I do think there's so much good in him that he can do. He is, in my mind, I've said this before, he could essentially be Moussa Dembele, but with a final third product. But he just hasn't done it. And now we're in this kind of really awkward scenario where I think the player wants to go. The club, I think, would be willing to let him go. But I'm struggling to see how it happens. And there's so many reasons for it. He's only, he got 3.5 years left of the 6-year deal he signed. So there's a lot of contract left. So he's not in any, situation like any of the likes of, say, Aurier or Ericsson or any of these players in the past. Tanguy has wanted to go in certainly the last 2 summers and other occasions as well. He's wanted to leave the club. But, and again, I don't know whether this is a pointer, whether he maybe has to look at this as well in his head, but there aren't a line of suitors waiting for him. There aren't people, queuing up to sign Tanguy Ndombele. And then when you see performances like that, you kind of understand why. There's the odd word, there's the odd thing, and I'm sure he gets told in his ear by those around him that, all Barcelona are interested, or whoever are interested, but nothing results in an offer. What doesn't help either is that when he signed, Tottenham was so excited to sign a player that was one of the best young players in Europe, most talented players. What was he, only 20? Was he 22 when he signed, I think? He's 25. He turned 25 on, I think it was the 28th of December. So we're not talking about a kid anymore either. But yeah, when he signed that deal, it was a big deal. It made him one of the highest earners at Tottenham. And not a lot of clubs out there can, we often kind of talk about, Spurs wages, Spurs wage structure and everything. But the wages that Tonguy's on, or I'm led to believe is on, not many clubs will pay that for players. So then you are looking at those elite clubs. And they're probably not going to take a risk on him. And the other problem is Tottenham aren't going to take a huge hit on that fee. I think we're at a point now where they would probably accept a loss, of course. But, it was such a pre-pandemic signing. It really was, 60 million plus all in. Big wages. Saw off competition from other teams in Europe to sign him. That transfer doesn't happen post-pandemic. Certainly for Tottenham, it doesn't happen. And that's the problem, is that no one is ever going to pay 60 million for Tanguy now. No one is going to pay 50 million for Tanguy now. I'd even struggle to think of the number that you'd get for Tanguy now. And then you've got more to it, though. There's not even just that. There would be clubs that Tottenham maybe would sell him to or loan him to, potentially, if the deal was good enough. I still don't. I mean, loaning, you'd have to get someone to take all or most of the wages off the table. The loan fee would have to be very good, and maybe with an option to sign him. But ultimately, it's also up to where Tanguy wants to go. Tanguy is one of these players who I don't think you just see him want to move now to a run-of-the-mill. Tanguy honestly thinks that he should be at one of the top teams. And this also narrows down the options of where he could go. Again, this is what I want to stress. We're not talking about a player with an attitude problem in terms of he wouldn't down tools, he wouldn't not train, he wouldn't not do any of these sort of things. If in the weeks ahead or in the months ahead, if there is no exit for him this window, he will work as hard as he can behind the scenes. Conte said the other day he's working really well in training. He's really committed. And that's what he'll do. But I can't see, there's certain clubs that he won't go to and can't go to. It's not as simple as ship him out. Get that guy out of our club, which I've seen on Twitter. And I've seen some people comparing it to the Hossam Ghali incident. It's a difficult one, that one. I wouldn't say it was that. He didn't throw the club shirt. I think that's a slightly different thing. Ghali was a very different player. Someone reminded me of when he kind of got booted in the face, didn't he? Did he lose a tooth or something and kept playing or something like that? Very different character, very different. It was in Martin Joel's era, wasn't it? Throwing the club shirt, I think that's pretty insulting to a club. That is, I think we are talking about a man walking slowly. Again, I have to keep stressing that, but it was just, it's just this scenario and the way it happened. It was one of those things where you can see something unfolding before your eyes, and you just want to shout, "No, don't do it!" But it was, the cogs were already turning, and they were working away. So, yeah, it's something that really, I think the fan pressure now maybe knocks a few million off of what Spurs would ask for, probably. But I still just think an exit would be so. It would take someone in the remaining weeks of this month to have come up with something really unexpected. I wonder what clubs Tanguy would go to, and there's so few. You think of like a Bayern Munich, or obviously a Barcelona or Real Madrid, or you know, it sounds weird because and people out there are probably thinking, looking at that performance against Morecambe, you're thinking, what? How is this guy? These are his kind of pool of clubs that he would look to play for. Unless someone could convince him that, look, mate, you've just got to play. You've got to play football at the moment. You've got a World Cup coming up. As it stands, Lo Celso's probably ahead of him in the pecking order. Probably. I get the impression. It's a funny little thing that, and this is going back from my non-league reporting days. I always used to know when managers, when they preferred certain players. And this isn't rocket science. It's not some incredible thing here, but I used to know which players the managers kind of had as their favourites, or players that they kind of believed in a bit more, because they'd always refer to them by their first name. Little tiny thing. But yeah, you'd sometimes get someone, Barry was excellent today, or you get someone else going, we brought Jones in, we brought him in from the other side, and you just little things like that. And it probably is reading too much, but I just find that, when Conte so far, a few times he's spoken about Lo Celso, he calls him Giovanni. And, with Tanguy, it's, it's not, I think there was one occasion called him Tanguy, but sometimes he isn't even saying his name and stuff. And, I think he has fallen behind that in the pecking order. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens with Tanguy. I was aware I've spoken about 26 minutes on Tanguy, so I apologise to anyone who really didn't want to hear more about Tanguy, because you just got 26 minutes of it. But yeah, I think you can probably feel the frustration within me. So yeah, the Tanguy Ndombele Appreciation Society meeting is cancelled for this week. Postponed. We'll have to see. Maybe postponed until further notice is probably the best way to put it. But the rest of the game, it's almost as bad. I don't know whether the fact that 11 was so poor against a League One struggling side is more of an indictment of their level, of the squad level, of maybe the motivation levels of some of those players, or just a damning indictment of just the way that squad has been crafted. I don't know, because again, I feel like we're in this kind of repetitive scenario where I'm talking to you about a heavily rotated team looking like a bunch of amateurs put together, and on the day. How many times are we going to say this? Now it's Morecambe, Mura at home until Harry Kane came off the bench, and Lucas Moura and Sonny came off the bench as well. Obviously, Dinamo Zagreb aren't a terrible team in any way, but that was an embarrassment that night. Who else we had? Royal Antwerp that night as well. Vitesse away as well. They stretch back these performances, and it's just like, is it a mentality thing? Is it, we said before the game, some of us in the press area, we were talking about the game, and we were saying, we're quite interested. It's quite exciting to sometimes see new faces, and or you think that they'll all be motivated to show why they should be in this 11. And, some people, I remember there was some criticism, wasn't there, about there being a starting 11 and a second 11 being used in Europe. Was it Nuno? I think it was under Nuno. And it's a bit like, I didn't really get that, because I kind of always felt that if you feel that you're in that second 11, like if you're the reserves at a club, you want to prove that you should be in the first 11? I don't know. I don't see that as demoralising. I see that as a challenge. But then everyone has different kind of views and ways of seeing things. But I just find it bewildering, really. And they were just poor. They were poor. I mean, looking throughout the side, poor Japhet Tanganga, he had another bad day. He lost, what's his name? Anthony O'Connor for the goal, for Morecambe's goal. He was nowhere near him. He just kind of wandered away from it. It was so poor defending. And Japhet's, again, another player that I think I've seen really good performances from. I've seen him getting, he was superb against Man City first game of the season. Seen him have some very composed matches. Then you've seen him have some daft moments like the Crystal Palace game to get him sent off, and listening in the among the press pack yesterday, they're writing him off. They kind of feel he's just not good enough to be a Spurs player. And I feel like it's just such a huge shame. He's only 22. He's so young. He's still got so much learning to do. And I think Conte is the kind of guy that can improve a player like that. But I think, when you make big mistakes in back-to-back matches, you're going to put yourself in that spotlight. Your confidence is going to drain. Just be interesting to see which way Jaffet goes now. He's either got to use this to kick himself back on again, or it kind of wallows in it and it defines him and he ends up kind of heading towards the exit door. I don't know, but yeah, I feel sorry for him. But then also, there were people writing Joe Rodon off yesterday, and I saw a few people on social media saying, "Oh, that's why he's not playing." That's harsh on Joe Rodon. And I'll explain why. Because he's got a real rib problem at the moment that is causing him a lot of pain. It's really hurt one of his ribs, I think, in training. And that was why he was only on the bench against Chelsea. He was in too much pain, really, to play a full game. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely the first half hour, maybe until he was properly warmed up, that I could see really restricted movement in him. I felt he wasn't running in the way. We were looking at him, watching the way he was running. It was a really stilted, awkward run, the way he was moving. Other than he had one ropey back pass early on, and then he had the moment that led to the corner that brought the goal. I mean, he could have cleared it anywhere but for a corner. I would also maybe slightly understand. You could see his anger that Galini hadn't come out. Galini really probably could have rushed out and picked up that ball. Another funny performance from Galini. There's nothing to really show what it. To be fair to him, yes, he didn't have actually a lot to deal with, but yeah, he just doesn't. I think it's not really a command of his area, and I think that's the thing that I've maybe seen in his performances this season. He just hasn't really inspired confidence from those around him. I'm sure he's a very good shot stopper. We've seen a couple of examples, not too many, but he just doesn't dominate. He doesn't control that area. He doesn't prowl around. And Lloris is very quick. He's very quick to move. We see him sweeping up all the time. Not literally sweeping up, but you know what I mean. And yeah, for me, Galini again, he's not, he's not staking his claim for anything really. Ben Davies was okay. I wouldn't say there was too much you could probably complain about Ben Davies on the day. Really, didn't really do too much wrong. Harry Winks was probably the pick of the midfielders. He understood what it meant. You could see that. And obviously he got his goal, which, excuse me, he says he meant. And who am I to disagree? I mean, we saw him score that goal in the European game, didn't he? I can't remember what it was when he floated it in from afar and it went all the way, and he admitted that was accidental. But he said last night, after this goal, yesterday afternoon, he said, no, I meant that. And he explained it as the reasoning is he aims for every free kick he takes like that, a deep free kick, he aims for the top corner. And then if it falls short, someone can head it on or maybe in. So he said, I was aiming for that top corner and it went in the top corner. So it was actually a really good kick that I meant. He didn't say really good kick, but he said I meant it. Winks was fine. I wouldn't say there was too much to criticise him about, really. Like I say, Ndombele and Lo Celso, they're two players who, combined worth more than £100 million that was spent on them in all, plus add-ons and all of that. They should be doing so much better. They should be cutting apart that opposition. They should be sliding balls through. They should be dribbling past players with ease, quite frankly. It should really, like I say, be a breeze for them. Lo Celso did put himself about, and he did, like I say, got an assist at the end as well. And I think he had a shot. Did he have a swerving shot that the keeper saved as well? I feel like I remember that. It wasn't a horrendous performance, but it wasn't really good enough. But I do think with him, you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt in terms of just coming back from injury. Wingbacks. Wingbacks is a really interesting one. I'd say Matt Doherty worked hard. Ryan Sessegnon, I felt, probably showed a little bit more. But what I found really frustrating was that I felt Ryan Sessegnon was starting to get into good areas and putting the ball into the box, but he just maybe wasn't quite finding a striker's run because there wasn't a striker. But what I found frustrating was that Conte made this strange decision, really, to switch the wing-backs for the second half. So he had Sessegnon on the right and Doherty on the left. I can only presume, I was trying to work out the reasoning behind it. It was one of those where it wasn't really a post-match to ask that kind of question. That was obviously dominated by other things. I can only presume that his logic was, well, we haven't got people in the box acting like strikers anyway to get on the end of crosses, so why not turn those wing-backs into additional attackers, get them to cut in and have shots at goal? And I mean, Doherty did have a shot well over the crossbar. Sessegnon had a really good chance, actually. I think Dele was tumbled over in the box and Sessegnon ran onto the ball and then fired it just wide of the right-hand post. So yes, in that respect, it kind of, well, it worked once for each, but I still didn't feel it really worked particularly well. And it kind of negated a lot of what Sessegnon looked like he was starting to build on. Good to see him back, though. Good to see him back, and he got a fair chunk of the game, didn't he? I think Emerson came on quite late for him in the final moment. So that's minutes-wise, that's very good for Sessegnon. And I can definitely see how I think he'll develop in that role. And I can see why Conte has got a lot of time for him as well and thinks he's got massive potential because he is probably the most natural player as a wing-back Spurs have got, especially with Doherty not quite where he should be. So as the wing-backs, and then you had Dele and Brian Hill. More disappointed with Dele. Dele clearly just isn't a striker. He's not able to play in that role. He doesn't make striker runs. What they kept doing, it was really frustrating, was, when you look at, how players are lined up when maybe, I don't know, Sky or BBC or whatever show you the team on the screen, the lineup. And they'll literally show you them in their positions. Excuse me, I knew my throat was going to give up on me again today. Dele and Brian Hill essentially stood like those little image of a team lineup for most of the match. They were about, 10 feet apart. You could have tied a bit of rope to them. Very rarely did they kind of split up. The only times they did was when one of them would go off on a bit of a wander. It was almost like, well, it was exactly what it was. It was two guys almost pretending to be strikers without knowing how to play like a striker. You could have had one sat behind the other. You could have had one go up to be a bit more of a target man. You could have done so many different things. But yeah, they just kind of stood alongside each other, didn't make very good runs, didn't really give many options to those around them. Dele, I'd say, was the most kind of disappointing as the more experienced player. He just didn't really do anything. He worked hard, he always does, but he just didn't offer anything. Brian Hill, he had a few... you really got to phlegm it up with Brian Hill, haven't you? He had a few nice little runs, made himself available. He's very enthusiastic. But when I say runs, it was more runs with the ball rather than runs in terms of those attacking runs into the box so you can be found with the final ball. He's a player that can be developed. I think they've just got to find where that best position for him is. It's if you're going to play let's say a 3-4-3, is it on the right or the left of that front three? Is it a 3? Would it be like a 3-4-1-2? Would he play in the one behind the two strikers? Could he benefit from that better? He's a funny one. He's so young. And again, we said with Tanguy at the start, 18 months, a year to 18 months it takes to acclimatise, and Hill has come to a very different league. He's very much, he's a fight. He got clattered the first couple of challenges on him, but really heavy ones. And he's only a little guy, but he took them well and he battled on, and I hope he will adapt more and more. I do think there's a player in there. Injuries and absences. I asked him about that as well afterwards. So Eric Dyer has picked up a little calf injury, I think it is, a little strain on Saturday in training. He'd only just come back from illness. Conte seemed to think it hopefully isn't going to be a serious one. Hopefully that means he'll be back for Chelsea, but I don't take my word on that. I don't know. I'm just trying to assume from what Conte said. Sergio Reguilon was rested. He said obviously he had that problem, didn't he? That's meant he hasn't played since half time. Was it against Southampton? Has he played since then? So many games, I tell you. But anyway, he was rested that night. Steven Bergwijn is set to be on his way back, potentially for the Chelsea game. So I think who else was missing? Romero's still working hard on his way back. Very interesting situation we'll have with Romero soon. Because obviously South America and Asia have got their matches at the end of this month, their little international break. I'd imagine if Romero recovers in time to go back off with Argentina, who he got injured with before, you'll probably see a mushroom plume kind of nuclear explosion cloud above Hotspur Way somewhere, because I think they would go ballistic. I'm trying to think when the squad. I think the Argentina squad must be coming out soon. I think it's this week. If Romero's in it, wow. I mean, he's got to. When we talk about Tanguy and the decision making on the pitch, I think off the pitch, whatever Romero wants to do, I think he may well say it's better for him to stay at Hotspur Way anyway, but if he doesn't believe that, someone has to tell him, no. Just work on your fitness, please. Don't go off again with your country. There's a part of me that thinks with Lo Celso, it probably would be good to get him some minutes, but there's another part of me that knows that Lo Celso in international duty is not often a good mix, and he does seem to pick up injuries while on international duty. It's something about the Argentinian national team, maybe. Don't know. But there you go. I think who else was missing? I think that was it. It was old Sonny, obviously. Sonny, we're waiting to find out more details. Conte hopes it's only 2 weeks. I think it's a hamstring problem. There's some within the club that are a little bit worried it could be more like 5 weeks or more. You're going to have 2 weeks with the international break anyway. So either way, really, if it's 2 weeks or 5 weeks, Spurs fans are probably going to see him out for about the same amount of time, if you know what I mean. It just depends kind of what he can do when the international break is over. Sonny's normally quite a quick healer. Sounds weird. Sounds like he's Superman or something, but you know what I mean. We often see him come back before his recovery time frames are normally. And yeah, so that's that really. That's the match. That's obviously we now await what the rest of the transfer window brings, and these, of all the times to be playing Chelsea, Arsenal, Leicester, Chelsea again. It's like, Spurs are really kind of stuttering and stumbling at the moment all over the place. I'd say if there was one benefit of Kane and Lucas saving the day yesterday, it was them getting some goals under their belt, maybe a little bit of confidence for them. Lucas did very well for the second goal. It was all about him winning the ball back, sprinting up, rounding the keeper, scoring. Kane's goal was a very nice finish, little turn and poke into the corner from Emerson. Like it might have been a bit of a foul, but won the ball, played it to Lo Celso, played it to Kane, turn and shot. So maybe for those two players, it wasn't the worst thing to get a goal under their belts ahead of Wednesday's. It's going to be a tough match again. But it just shows how Conte needs some help in the transfer window. Whether it's this window or next, I think this window needs to be something done. We're now, 10 days into it. I know a lot of fans would like Adama Traore. It's really interesting that both he and Matt Doherty are now cup tied as well. They both play for their respective teams. Um, I think they play Sheffield United, and no, Traore didn't get a goal or assist, so that makes it 21 appearances this season now without a goal or assist. Um, but I'm led to believe Spurs are going to have a go. They're going to try. They're going to again. Totally understand and probably agree with anyone saying why hasn't it happened by now. I agree, and I also feel like he's being brought in to be a wing back. But I think with Son's injury, if they could get him in sooner, I would I know you'd more likely see him take on, Sonny's position probably in that team. Look, you don't want to know my thoughts on Adama Traore. They're very unlikely to change unless he does, which I'm sure he's devastated about, in my opinion. It's a guy with very little end product. I do take on board what people say that, he also creates a lot of space for others. And yes, you got Adama Traore sprinting at you. You're probably going to have to double up on him. And yes, naturally, that will allow more room for someone like Kane, Son, Lucas, all of those to have more room to do what they do. Especially when you're playing a teams that like sit back and stuff like that and pack the numbers into defence. However, can't you just buy someone that can create space and also have an end product? Or even better, buy a wing back who can actually be a wing back? I don't know. Like I said, I think it'd be exciting to watch, and it would fit the whole Tottenham never a normal day thing, because I think he would bring chaos wherever he goes in good and bad ways. And I do think it would be another added element of intrigue to Tottenham Hotspur. And maybe you look at it for the price, if it is 20 million or under, maybe it's not the worst deal in the world. And hey, I suppose it's not our job to look at it from a financial sense, though. But certainly, he probably would be worth more than that, a lot more if Conte were to improve him. I think we just need to see something happening with Tottenham, and we need to see some positive movement and not believe that they're just going to leave it until the very end of the transfer window, as they often do. I get it's a difficult window, and I get deals are tough to do, but I don't know. I just feel things should have been set up a lot sooner. Obviously we know now. Well, we knew, but I'm not going to go there. But Daniel Levy, obviously, you will have seen, is in or has been in the Bahamas. I understand he was there on holiday, and it was, he'd been there since I think pre-Christmas, just to have a break. Obviously, when you hear those words, you hear a break and a holiday, whatever. Let's call it a break rather than a holiday, because I don't think really Daniel Levy ever stops working. I get the impression that the guy is just, well, he is. Everyone tells me he's an absolute workaholic. But I don't want that to sound like, oh God, he's run away at the biggest time and all this sort of stuff. Because, it's a little bit like the Conte meeting thing. People making maybe myself included, making a bigger deal of the whole Conte saying, I haven't had my meeting yet, blah, 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 to evaluate the players, all of that. They all talk every day. They all WhatsApp. Conte said the other day that pretty much almost every day he messages Daniel Levy back and forth. And then, and this was during a time when Levy is meant to be in the Bahamas. Was he talking to Joe Lewis about anything particularly exciting? I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't definitely know that Joe Lewis was there at the time. You'd imagine, logic would suggest that if he's in the Bahamas, he would likely have spoken to Joe Lewis. Would it be about transfers? The cynical side of me would say I don't think exactly we've been seeing Joe Lewis ever pump money into Tottenham in the last 20 years. So are we likely to see him suddenly pump money in the transfer window for the first time in 2 decades? My head tells me probably not. I don't really know entirely what. There's some speculation about, maybe they're discussing selling the clubs, anything. unless you're sitting there in a meeting between just two people, it's very difficult to know that if they did have a meeting, what they were talking about. Like I say, all I know for sure is that Levy has been over in the Bahamas since before Christmas. I must admit, I don't entirely know whether he's back or not, but I know he hasn't been around, but he has been still talking with people. Actually, yes, I do know he has been, because I was told that by someone. And actually, as I said, Conte was also has been texting back and forth with him as well. So, yeah, in a roundabout way of saying that still business should have been done. Tottenham Sunday's match showed once again they need a striker. I'll be honest to say, I actually think that's almost more crucial than the whole Traore wing-back thing. I just feel like there's no support for Kane. There's no backup for Kane. I'd like, in my ideal world, I'd like a player who could be a natural striker, but also can pull out wide if required. I know that's a rare thing. Someone that is comfortable being a natural striker, but also able to come into the channels. But that, for me, would solve it, because then you'd have a player who wouldn't just be a backup. And I think that is always Spurs' biggest problem, is selling what is a backup role. And everyone says, even I was having a discussion with someone at the match yesterday about how comes other clubs can buy top strikers? Because they play with two up front more often than Tottenham do. It's as simple as that. Tottenham very rarely play with two up front. Harry Kane very rarely doesn't want to play a game. And yes, I know the manager should make that decision. But if you've got Harry Kane saying, I want to play, and you think Harry Kane is likely to score you goals, you're probably going to play Harry Kane. Yeah. So obviously, there's that. As I said last week, Conte would like a central midfielder if possible. And obviously, when you see everything that's happening with Tanguy and potentially Dele going, you can see that's where there would end up being a space. They'd like a left-sided centre-back. Maybe that would rely on possibly Joe Rodon heading off, and then you'd have a little bit of a reshuffle in terms of who plays those second, understudy roles. And whether Joe Rodon leaves on loan, whether Joe Rodon leaves on a permanent deal or a loan with a view to a deal. Joe Rodon is clearly very frustrated at the situation. You would be, because he signed, was it just over a year ago now, a year and a half. He's played so little football. He really has. I'm trying to think of anything else. Why is it? This has been a very difficult transfer market to really kind of know, because we've got a new manager. We've got a very set way of playing. You've got that bond with Paratici from Juventus. They know each other. Yet there doesn't seem to have been players lined up and ready to go. And I've said before about the money, and they're not. And Conte being told in his first meeting that there wasn't going to be the sort of money that was available in the summer. Then Conte himself admitting that they'd only would move for players that really would be an improvement on the squad. Because, as I said before, Tottenham have bought so many players that, just almost for the sake of filling a role or taking a gamble or whatever. You look at one of the previous January window signings was Gedson Fernandes. I honestly actually don't even know where Gedson is nowadays. I think he went off on loan. Did he go on loan to Turkey or something like that? I can't remember. Look at Carlos Vinicius. Carlos Vinicius is now at PSV. So he wasn't a January transfer window signing, but what I'm kind of saying is that they take these gambles on players that kind of either don't work or they slightly work. And did I feel like we'd maybe be getting more from Paratici? Did you notice I just asked myself a question? That was really weird. So used to asking questions, I'm now asking them of myself. Did I expect a bit more from Paratici as the Juventus transfer guru? I probably did, I probably expected there to be a more clear, God, what a way to describe it. A clearer strategy, especially with Nuno. I can understand there being a bit, okay, what does this guy need? Let's work out the kind of players he needs. And then having the whole Tottenham transfer philosophy on top of that. But with Conte, it's a guy he knows probably inside out. Knows what kind of players he needs. And it's frustrating. It's Tottenham Hotspur. It always is. I'm just surprised that there's been nothing lined up at all, seemingly. Otherwise, it would have been done by now. So there you go. 54 minutes of talking about Tanguy or having a whinge about transfers. I still believe that we'll see movement in the next couple of weeks. I still believe you'll see at least one in, maybe two, and at least one, maybe two out from the first team squad. And a lot of loans from the development squad. I think we'll see a fair few of those go out on loan. Kiana Tete's come back from Northampton Town. I don't know if he's gone or he's about to go to Cheltenham, which is a step up for him, which is good because he was starting to kind of really show what he could do in League Two, and now we're going to League One. That'll be good. I'd like to see Dylan Markanday get a loan. I think he's earned it with his performances. I think Harvey White definitely needs to go back out on loan. I'd like to see Jack Clark go out on loan. There's a lot of players now in the under-23s who are just kind of treading water, really. They need to get proper first-team football somewhere. They're playing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think, on Monday. I think Monday next week against Blackburn. So if any of you don't normally go down to the Lameck Stadium to watch them play there, or sometimes they play at Hotspur Way occasionally. If you wanted to go to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you could always go and see them there. If some of these players you hear me write about or talk about or whatever, and you maybe haven't seen them through your own eyes, there's your opportunity. It sounds like I'm selling Tottenham's match for them, but it's something that I've always liked watching the academy matches. I like to know who's coming through and who's doing what, and actually, especially with the pandemic and making a lot of the games unavailable to go and see, and the timing of some of the games, I haven't been in a little while myself, so I'm going to hopefully try and get down there on Monday as well. Day after the North London derby, isn't it? But yeah, so that's Tottenham. Let's hope for better. Big match on Wednesday night. Big match on Sunday. Big match next week, midweek. And then another big match of the weekend. They're going to come thick and fast. Hopefully, these videos will see me get progressively happier, not progressively more and more frustrated. And hopefully we get some transfer movement as well. I mean, you'll see it. You can see out there's so little in the way of transfer rumours. A lot of transfer kind of reports you're seeing. Some of them obviously are absolute guff, but some of them you'll see are like about summer deals. There's not a lot of actual looking at a player to bring in now. And I think this is one of these windows. I think I said it a few weeks back in one of my videos that you're not going to see a lot of money spent in this window. You've got the likes of Aston Villa. Aston Villa are probably setting the example, aren't they? They probably are leading the way in terms of the business they're doing. Let's see what happens with Tottenham. But I do think they'll try and get Traore through the door. Personally, I hope it's more than that because I think they need a lot more than Adama Traore myself. But who knows? I'd love him to prove me wrong. I'd love him to be a huge success. And I do think he'll be very exciting to begin with. And I think naturally he will bring something different. And I think Conte will improve him. I just hope that he's of the required level, that Tottenham need to improve the squad like Conte wants. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? Spurs may not even get that done. This is the way the January transfer window in particular works and how difficult it is to get deals done. But there you go. Right, I'm going to head off now. Sorry, that felt like a proper rant at sometimes towards the end. And me also getting some much needed therapy about Tanguy Ndombele by speaking about a lot of the issues with him and his good points and bad points. But thanks for sticking with it if you've got this far. And I shall be back. I'll try and get another one in this week, but it might be tough with all the press conferences and the matches and the way it's all going to pan out. If not, it will be next week. So, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.